Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a quick dry embossing tip for you. All supplies I'm using for this project are listed and linked in the video description below for your convenience. Simon Says Stamp has these amazing 3D embossing folders that give very detailed embossed results. When you see one in real life, the embossed paper in real life, it looks like some very expensive paper product. Definitely not something you think you can create yourself, but you can. The embossing folders are designed for A2 cards, so they will emboss 4¼ by 5½ inch panels. I have a brand new embossing folder. This is the Exotic Wines folder. It is just released today. But Simon Says Stamp has many other 3D embossing folders with other wonderful designs on their website. And I've also shared several card ideas with some of their previous folder designs here on my YouTube channel, and I'll link a couple in the cards for you. Now, the trick to getting the best results with these folders is water. This is a very old tip, but it still works. Now, here's the panel I embossed without using any water. You can see it does look very pretty. I have the beautiful embossing and it looks nice. Here's another panel that I embossed with the use of water. There is a world of a difference in terms of depth of the embossing. The second panel is much more detailed. The embossing is deeper. There are finer details visible on the paper, and it just looks so much better compared to the first one. So that's how you do it. I have a panel of Simon Says Stamp soft navy cardstock. I love to use these embossing folders on colored cardstock. And I also have a spray bottle filled with water. I'm going to generously spray the panel with water and then spread the water all over the panel using my fingers. I want the paper to be damp. You can see that the paper starts to warp from all of that water. That's fine. We're adding quite a bit of water to it, so the paper will warp. Next, I flip the paper to the other side and I spray it with some more water on the back. I want the back side of the paper to be just as damp. Spray and then spread the water around to make sure the panel is equally saturated with water. Next, place your panel inside the embossing folder, align it, and close the folder. I'm using Spellbinder's Platinum die cutting machine, and the sandwich that works for me here is the platform, the embossing folder with the paper inside, and note how I'm placing the folder slightly at an angle. This will make it easier to send the folder through the machine, and then I add a 10 embossing mat on top. It does require quite a bit of strength to crank the handle, but it gives me absolutely amazing results. Now, I will say that I also have the Platinum 6 die cutting machine, and I am not able to use the same sandwich in that machine as I kind of feel like that's too much pressure. You can substitute the embossing mat with several sheets of cardstock to lessen the pressure if you need to. And let's take a look. Isn't that gorgeous? This is so deep and so detailed, and it actually I think it doesn't even look like paper. It kind of looks like leather or some professionally made material. All of the water loosened the paper fibers and it allowed them to stretch when the pressure was added. So we don't have any tears in the paper because sometimes when you emboss, you can have that. But we do have beautiful, deep embossing, probably as deep as you can go. Now, this panel is still damp, of course, and I recommend you place it under a book or a large clear block and let it air dry. Make sure you set something heavy-ish on top of the panel so that the paper doesn't curl up. Now, let's try this again with a red cardstock panel. Again, I sprayed it on both sides and spread the water on the paper, making sure it was all saturated. And voila! It looks amazing. I cannot get enough of how deep this embossing is. Had I not used water, it would not have been this pretty. It would have embossed, of course, but the embossing would have been much less detailed. Now, I thought about creating an embossed card front and card back, because why not, right? So I cut a panel of colored cardstock. This is the same color as my embossed panel, and this happens to be Schoolhouse Red from Simon Says Stamp. I cut it to 5.5 by 8.5 inches. I flipped the embossing folder back side up, and I inserted my panel inside the folder like so. So if you think about this panel as an opened card base, we are embossing the back of the card base. So the front of the embossing folder design is facing the back of the future card base. I'm not spraying this paper with water as I don't want it to warp at all. I'm fine with having less detail because it is going to be the back of my card, so it doesn't matter that much. Now you will need a wider die cutting machine for this. I have Platinum from Spellbinders. The opening here is 8.5 inches, so I can rotate my card base and be sure that it is going to go through the machine without any problems. And here's what we have. We have a beautifully embossed card back. Now I can take this panel to a scoring board and create an A2 card base. So I'm just scoring this at 4.25 inches to create an A2 side folding card base for my card. I'm going to fold it along the score line and then crease the line with the scoring tool to make sure that the card is going to stay closed. Now we have a card base with an embossed card back. We just need to add the embossed panel to the front. And remember, this panel was embossed with water, so it has a much deeper emboss. Now we can also add a white cardstock panel to the inside of the card to write our message. I did that off camera, and here's what it looks like. Very unusual to have embossing on the front and the back, and the card looks very luxurious and simply stunning. Now I kept this design very simple. The embossing is so beautiful, I did not want to add anything on top to cover it up, so I just added a skinny strip sentiment. For this, I cut one from the Simon Says stamp, reverse all the things pre-printed sentiment strips. I love these sentiment strips. They come in packs of 4, I think, and you have either the reverse, which are black, that's the one I'm using here, or the regular, which are white, so basically black writing printed on white paper. I used one of my rectangular dies to cut it out. You can also use your paper trimmer to do that. And to make it look a bit more finished, I used a black pen and colored the white paper edge. Now you don't have to do this, but if you plan to put this sentiment onto a colored card base, it really does look so much nicer with the edge colored. You can use any black pen for this. If you have a black Copic marker, you can do that, use that, or any black marker that will do. Here, I'm just using an old black pen from Jane Davenport. Next, I die cut a banner from Gold Mirror cardstock, and I just added the black sentiment on top, having just a little bit of that gold show from the side. And if you notice, my banners, my pieces don't even match up. So my sentiment is even a little bit bigger than the gold banner. Now I learned this trick from Yasmin Diaz. She is amazing. And I was so inspired when I saw how she created banners for her sentiments, for her cards. So thank you, Yasmin, for sharing this tip. Then I just added the foam adhesive squares from the back and popped the banner onto the card. Super simple and easy to do, and it adds so much interest to an otherwise simple sentiment. Now I do have one more tip to share. I did not adhere my embossed panel flat onto the card. I cut 2 scrap cardstock panels about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my embossed panel. I adhered them together and then used that to adhere the embossed panel onto the card. Now what this helped the panel to stay perfectly flat, and it also added a little bit of dimension to my card. Now here's a look at the other cards I made using this trick in this embossing folder. I used my Simon Says stamp Audrey blue cardstock for this card. Again, I embossed the back of the card too and added the white cardstock panel on the inside to write a message. And here's the red card again. The embossing looks so amazing, so rich on red. And I did the same thing on the Simon Says stamp Fog cardstock. Again, it looks very elegant. I hope you will give this idea a try. Next time you do some dry embossing, make sure you spray your paper with water and see how big of a difference that makes. If you make a card inspired by this video, I'd love it if you shared your project online and tagged me on social media. I always enjoy seeing what you make. Thanks so much for joining me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.